Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the Potato-less, the Potato Overline, and tonight on Mechanics of StarCraft, we're going to discuss the Siege Tank. Before I introduce anyone, I've been told my mic sucks moose ball, so let me know in the comments if it sucks, if it doesn't. And tonight we have Zappy.
Here.
Alazavarus.
Thank you for pronouncing my name.
Some newbie Zerg who I forget what his name is.
Ooh.
Ouch.
We have the toninator here. And he streams his top 25 masters, so yeah.
We're gonna use it. We're gonna allow him to self-whore right now. I'll tell them.
Yeah, tune in at twitch.tv/my full name.
Slash my full name.
It's fucking long, okay?
It's like the toninator.
No.
No, it's your actual name, isn't it?
Frederick, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
We'll just put the link down.
Yeah,
we'll link it and
description. And lastly, we have Eric, you go. If he wants to say anything. Okay, there we go.
He's not allowed to say anything. Anytime you introduce him, you cut him off as he's trying to say something.
He honestly does. I kind of wish our other host was here, so that way he could just tell us how siege tanks are just like ants.
Okay,
they crawl, and they stop, and then they go, and then they stop, and then they go, and then they stop.
So siege tanks actually, in the way that they take territory and they kind of like leapfrog each other forward, are very similar to ants, because the ants will move forward in this kind of wave where somebody has to jump on a piece of prey, and they'll attack stuff.
Alright, here's the deal. There are two kinds of siege tanks. There's balanced siege tanks in StarCraft 2, and then there's fucking broken siege tanks from StarCraft 1. Which one are we gonna talk about?
I guess we're gonna talk about both.
Tanks?
Guys, we are gonna lag TV this episode.
Probably.
Okay.
Let's go more about on ants.
Okay, so just so everybody knows, we are in fact talking about siege tanks, not ants, and we will probably make the distinction between Arclight and Crucio siege tanks, just to fill everybody in. Arclight siege tanks were the ones in Brood War. They cost 2 supply and were, according to Toninator, imbalanced. And the Crucio siege tanks are the one in StarCraft 2, where they've got heavier armor, more DPS in tank mode, and they cost an extra supply, so they're 3 supply total.
And in Brood War, they did 70 damage a shot. And the Crucio siege tanks deal 35.
Well,
they deal half the damage per shot.
Granted,
but they have larger splash rate, is that right?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I believe the splash was larger in Brood War just because the pathing was so bad that you had to have larger splash. Alright, so does anybody have any opening comments?
I know Potato likes this story, so I guess we'll open with it.
Sucks.
Back when I was a little kid playing the StarCraft 1 campaign, I would get bored with my siege tanks, and I'll rapidly click them until they do the horde out, dun 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 dun, and that was the only time I would move them. They would only move during the time frame that they were singing. Yeah, I was kind of like really bored.
So Merrick wasted a ton of time moving siege tanks. Does anyone have anything related to how these things work?
Yes.
By working,
they're really fucking slow.
Okay. Alazavarus, how about you kick us off? Because clearly I can't rely on Potato Lisk and Merrick.
To be fair, you asked 2 trolls to get you started.
Yeah, that was a bad idea. I've got 2 trolls, a Zerg player, and then Alazavarus who's not saying anything.
Well, I was just contributing to the drinking game because apparently that's my portion is whenever I tell a story about my childhood.
Well, okay, shut the F off then.
Wait, what was mine?
So I don't know what to say about movement of the tanks because I never really, I guess there's just tank tracks.
Yeah, the movement is pretty straightforward. I mean, I think everybody's pretty familiar with how tank treads work. It's just essentially a bunch of wheels with a rubber band stretched around them. It's not a bus.
Rolling friction.
On that hand,
on a tangent.
Thank you. On the other hand, we have very interesting weapons that siege tank possesses. First of all, Arclight and Crucio, the Brood War tank and the Winds of Liberty tanks, they have different weapons. So, The first weapon is either 80mm plasma cannon or 90mm plasma cannon for Crucio, which is, well, plasma cannon. We'll discuss it later, I guess.
That is the tank mode cannons for
Yes.
each one. So they did get a 10mm upgrade in between games.
Yeah, and they did gain an additional range. The Siege Tank Brood War actually had a range of 12 as opposed to 13 in StarCraft 2.
Okay, that's a good point. But that is in siege mode.
In
Maybe
Siege
it's-
mode, yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe
well,
because of the change in weapons.
Yeah, it could be, the larger cannon would allow you to, the larger diameter cannon, would allow you to pack more powder in for the same length of a shell, so in theory you could end up with more range out of it. I mean, there's nothing too complicated there.
Yeah. I think it's also interesting, the StarCraft 2 Siege Tank has a bigger model.
Bang for your buck.
Yeah, it's a bigger unit, so it kind of makes sense it's 3 supply.
Yeah, and we can attribute that to its heavier armor in addition to larger weapons.
yeah, much
He's also
larger.
the larger operator of the tank.
He put on a little weight.
He decided to go on vacation between Brood War and StarCraft 2, eat a lot of burgers, and then chill on the beach.
Well, let's face it, he wasn't really needed in the in-between time.
Yeah,
They told him take 5, and he took that literally.
Well, he took 4.
Take 5 of
fair.
every food.
No, he took 4 years. That's just how it went.
Fair enough.
Alright.
It really honestly felt like 12.
Well, you know what,
Okay.
Merrick? You just gotta suck it up.
So,
Alright, so
Dude.
let's talk about how the Siege Tank works. The big thing, obviously, that everybody knows is, in tank mode, obviously it can just shoot, but for the long range siege mode, it actually needs to bolt itself to the floor, because that's how powerful the cannon is.
That's a good
Well,
point.
I actually have a pretty good idea about the siege mode, to be honest.
Alright, go for
I
it.
feel that it's actually a really large ghost rifle, so it uses electromagnetics to propel a huge metal slug at high speeds. And of course the recoil from that would
Knock it over.
definitely require it to be anchored into the ground.
Alright,
I mean,
well,
it literally becomes an artillery unit.
Alazavarus is gonna rip you apart for that railgun comment in a second.
yes.
He's about to
But
take-
first
Should I do
off,
it now or just a bit later?
no,
Do it
let
now.
let me explain
Just
something.
go ahead.
I'll
do it
get it
now.
over before I derail everybody with a troll comment.
Yes. First, I just want to say, when it's in siege mode, it's not a tank so much anymore as self-propelled artillery. Obviously it's not moving, but we see this in stuff like throughout history. The first example that just comes to my mind was the 88mm anti-aircraft guns of World War II, which they had pylon-looking things similar to how the tanks treads, I guess, fan out when it goes into siege mode. It had something similar that you would use to attach it to the ground and then lift it off a little bit, just so that it would stay in place while you fired it, because, I mean, it was a pretty huge gun. And as for what I think it was Potatoeless said about it flipping over, they had this problem in battleships around the 1900s, where they had to start making them really, really wide, because otherwise when they fired a full broadside, it would literally capsize the ship.
Well, on the other hand, I
can see
mean,
that
in
happening.
1900s, we never knew what the, no recoil, what we call now artillery is, so,
We didn't have like the hydraulic
Yeah.
recoil suppressors
That's what I
and
mean.
such. So Alazavarus, you want to go on about the railgun?
yes please. Well,
Go for it.
Marek, I guess, you've just mentioned Gauss rifle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so do you know what Gauss rifle is?
Well,
Ouch.
And
most
how
part,
it
most
works
of my stuff is
generally.
coming from Mech Warriors, so.
Okay, I'm going to interject here. Mech Warriors, all awesome games. Carry
Yes.
on.
Of course.
That's my job to make it in
A
complete
very, very
relevant statements.
good staple of sci-fi military.
Oh, just awesome. Anyway, Alazavarus,
Yeah,
you want to
just-
continue with your point?
Yeah, okay, so,
Looking forward to
pretty
this.
much, Gauss rifles are different to rail guns, which we'll talk about later. So, Gauss rifle, basically, you have just multiple coils which goes through the barrel of the gun, So when you fire, well, anything, a bullet, the bullet itself goes through those coils and accelerates. And coils are, well, circle.
Basically, what he's saying is you would run an electric wire around the barrel to generate a magnetic field, so that you could use that to...
magnetic field will push the stuff. We need someone to explain this stuff.
And there have been experiments with this in recent history. I know I heard a couple years ago about the Navy experimenting with railguns, where they could actually get bullets to break the speed of sound.
A railgun is different than a Gauss rifle. It's very important.
It is. So
Alazavarus
is going to finish explaining.
Sorry, I'll let you explain.
Yep.
Yeah. So we have the Gauss rifle, well, coil gun, which is coils, just magnetic coils, which accelerates the actual shell or something through the barrel, so it comes out with enormous speed. On the other hand, we have a railgun. Railgun basically works like, it's pretty simple. You have two rails. Two pieces of metal which are parallel. On one piece of metal, your current runs from, let's say right to left, and on the other, you have the current which runs from left to right, so in a different direction. And when you get something which conducts in between those stuff, you get...
Like the bullet or shell or whatever it is that you're firing.
Yeah, I'm talking general case now, so,
okay.
Let's say shell. So you get a shell, which is highly conductive. So you place this shell in between those rails, and because of Lorentz forces, which I guess someone can explain, because if we want, or we can just get Vendetta to edit it for us.
We'll put that in later. I don't really feel like it.
Yeah.
I gotta be honest, I'm pretty tired right now. So.
They're not that important.
Kinda. So, because of Lorentz forces, the shell actually gets pushed out by quite a big deal. On the other hand, the force itself seems pretty small, so that's why people usually, fire the shell and use the railgun for the actual acceleration. And we can even see it on the actual siege tank, because when it is in siege mode, it is two rails. It's not a single barrel or anything. So
the whole gun assembly is
I didn't fully understand the difference between Gauss rifle and railgun, so that was my bad on that one.
Yes, you're a very bad person. You should feel bad.
And you give me an opportunity to rip you apart, so yay, thank you. Okay, can I just throw out a question out there so you guys can discuss it a bit? So, okay, by the lore and stuff, we know that siege tanks fire plasma. It just says plasma cannons and plasma stuff, like plasma shells. So how do you think this plasma is fired?
Alright, go for it. You go first.
So talking about railguns, there's actually a test in 2008, and I just sent you a picture of it actually, where the projectile is going so fast because, the two rails basically turn into a big electromagnet, and the forces push up against each other and push it forward really, really, really fast. Mm-hmm. And actually, if you look at the picture, behind it is this cone of fire. But it's not fire, it's actually plasma. So...
All fire is plasma?
Alright, so does somebody want to explain what plasma is real quick, just so I don't have to?
Okay.
Or is it up to me?
I guess. Well,
go for it.
Okay, so plasma is basically ionized gas. As conventional plasma.
Yep, so basically what this is some sort of substance that's been heated so much that it's gone past melting, it's gone past boiling, and it's actually beginning to lose its outer layers of electrons, so it becomes highly ionized. I think mainly, though, when it's involved in the siege tank shell, all we really need to pay attention to is the fact that it's really, really freaking hot.
Yeah, it can deal damage to pretty much anything. It's not,
Except broodlords.
Well, it can do damage to anything it can hit.
Anything it hits, yeah.
Okay, all I'm saying is if a Marine who can shoot 5 spaces can hit a Broodlord, why can't a siege tank who can shoot 13 and is already aiming up
Because
give
it's
it a
like
shot?
You said, it's not aiming up. It's self-propelled artillery. Artillery hits the ground.
Alright, you remember what example I used with the 88mm anti-aircraft gun?
Yeah,
It's
that was an
not
artillery
famous
unit
for
that
being...
hit air units. That was
It's not
doesn't make it
famous
hit
for
air.
hitting air units, though. It's famous for shooting down tanks. I believe it was in the Africa campaigns. Rommel said, hey, if I can shoot this thing at an aircraft that's flying 40,000 feet up above me, why can't I just point it over there and hit that tank?
He's a lot smarter than the commanders in StarCraft 2, I guess.
I mean, we have the new Thor, anti-aircraft high-impact payload thing in Heart of the Swarm, where that shoots at a range of 10 on those dorsal siege cannons. So, I mean, it makes sense that they would have designed the siege tank itself to be able to hit things at a very long range on the ground. But it seems like for some of the crazy modifications that as we see, especially in like the Wings of Liberty campaign, it seems like it would also be possible to get it to hit air. At a shorter range, probably, but still.
I think one of the things, other than, for just the sakes of game balance, to why the siege tank can't hit air, is maybe it just can't actually target air units that well, so it misses too much.
Yeah, 'cause it has to
Alright, think about it this way.
Lead it.
The targets is, imagine you're trying to hit a Zergling, right? Siege tanks blow apart Zerglings all the time. And these little guys are running at insane speeds, flying all over the place, and yet somehow these things can hit them from 13 range away.
Do you really think the siege tanks are hitting them directly, though? They could just
Does
be
it matter?
saying, fuck you, close enough.
Does it matter if it gets close enough? Okay, if you're at a close enough point for hitting the Zergling, say you're aiming at a mothership. Just crazy, huge example. Motherships are big. You don't have to hit it right in the Kadarian crystal in the middle of it. You can hit it anywhere and it will take damage.
Well, I'm looking at
also,
a picture. Oh, sorry, go for it.
You have to think about it like this. With ground targets, they're kind of stuck to one plane. While an air unit has multiple altitudes it can move to, it has more options of how to move, so therefore it would be harder to lead it and possibly hit it. I can see what you're saying with the mothership being so fucking massive and slow. Yeah, that would be an easy target. But other things like, I don't know, Mutas or Phoenix, on the other hand, would probably be pretty hard to hit.
On the other hand, I guess, that's just the angle of the siege tank, of the cannon of the siege tank. It just doesn't allow that much of a degree just to shoot air.
Well, that could be. I mean, I could see it having a minimum range where you can't shoot things that are too close to it just because it can't, scale its gun that high. But at the same time, we talked about how it could be close enough to hit a Zergling. Flak shells are a thing. For those of you who don't know, it's a shell, you fire it up in the air, and then it's got a timer on it so that when it gets to a certain altitude, or I think they've made ones with sensors on them before, that can actually detect when they get close to something, and then at that point, it explodes. And shoots, shrapnel everywhere.
Yeah, I think that the best explanation is balance purposes, but also I'm looking at a model, and it doesn't seem to have that much vertical ability to move. It seems to be mostly it can only move around horizontally on that swivel that it has. And you said it was like pointing into the air, but it's barely pointing into the air. It's pointing into the air so it can have a little bit longer range.
Right, but say we're talking about something that's 13 spaces away. That little bit scales up pretty high. I mean, say that's, and we'll try to get a picture of the picture that we're looking at right now. Say that's at a 30-degree angle. And it tries to shoot something 13 range away. It can still hit something at that point that's 7 range in the air.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that doesn't seem like it'd be insignificant to me when you consider that a Marine can fire...
Yeah, who can shoot 5, so...
Yeah, who shoots 5 and can still hit stuff in the air.
Yeah, but it's not a scale, that's the thing.
Yeah, StarCraft, the game is not to scale at all, so that's
the problem. Obviously there's no way a Marine can actually shoot half a siege tank's siege mode distance, give or take a bit.
Half or a third?
I'm rounding.
It's closer to a third if you're
It's
rounding,
actually,
you're doing
yeah,
it
it's
wrong.
closer to a third and a half.
You know what my fucking point is. Don't be That's a fair job, not
Potato
yours.
Lisk, I've been enjoying trolling you for the past 5 minutes or so, okay?
I'm already irritated that my Skype is being fucking retarded and I don't even hear half the shit you're saying, so.
Okay, can I bring up the next point?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
Which is to range as well. So we have, and I guess the same goes for most Terran units, and well, not only Terran, but mostly Terran. So you have the siege tank, which is shooting stuff with shells. So,
Well, ideally it shoots stuff.
well, I mean, let's say it does. So it shoots stuff with shells. So shells fly like, let's say 13 range. And they fly certain range everywhere. So even if it is an underwater map, even if it is some, well, I don't know, different planets, space
I
stations.
don't think we could assume it would still work in underwater, but I
No,
see
I mean
the
like
point you're
there
trying to
are
get at
underwater maps.
is that regardless of the gravity,
Yes.
it goes the same distance. Correct?
That's just because Blizzard doesn't think about stuff like that.
Well, no, hold on. Let's see where he's going with this.
No, I just wanted to bring this point up basically because like, it's kind of strange for me because on Earth, like you can jump that high and on Moon you can jump like three times as high, right?
Yeah,
Or-
because definitely outside forces like gravity, wind resistance, everything else like that would definitely affect the siege tank or any fucking projectile, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm not really sure why it would have the same range everywhere. My best guess would be is that whatever it is, the siege tank, it still fires at either it fires at a very consistent rate, and the changes in gravity that happen don't actually affect it all that much. So it might, at some point get like 13 and a half, but you'll never actually notice that kind of thing. So either that, or on lower gravity planets, they would, or I guess the opposite would work too. Lower gravity planets, they would put in less powder. Yeah, powder. Because, for instance, in battleships, when they're trying to aim their massive cannons, they'll put in the shell itself, but then they'll put in the powder separately in like huge satchel bags. So they could be doing something similar with the siege tank, where they put in less each time on lower gravity planets, so it ends up going the same range to be more efficient or something, because somebody higher up in the Dominion decided, hey, we don't need to shoot that far.
No, I think that the better answer is the targeting computer of the siege tank doesn't let it go past that far.
Well, I mean,
Which is
that could
interesting
also be true,
point
but
because
then
it limits the firepower of fucking Terran Dominion or whatever.
Well, let's go ahead and point this out.
No,
too.
hold on,
The
I wanna
tank
talk about that
already
real quick.
shoots farther than it can see, so I can kind of see where the targeting computer wouldn't expect to shoot further than it already
yes,
does.
but
Because it already
But
shoots farther than
that
the fucking
still
pilot can
means
see.
that still means that A, somebody higher up in the Dominion who programmed the targeting software didn't think you'd need to shoot farther, and B, I don't see how that affects planets with, say, higher gravity, unless 13 range is the maximum for the highest gravity planet that they've been on. So, I guess that's where I'm a little lost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I was lost with this as well, so...
Could you imagine if they actually added, like, gravity effects and stuff into different maps?
That would be
That would
awesome.
be a fucking pain in the ass, as I
No, it would be awesome.
It would be so
would never-
realistic, though.
No,
Oh my
I
God.
think if it has low gravity, Zerglings should be able to hit air units.
Banelings should be able to launch themselves off of ramps.
Yeah, they
and
could.
air units as
They
well.
can just jump.
When Reapers go up and down cliffs, they can fly for a little bit.
Hellions,
Vultures
that
can
would
jump
be
up
too
and down
awesome.
cliffs like a fucking Reaper.
Hellions
Hellions
now
get a new
suicide
upgrade
off
called
cliffs onto armies
Wings.
below and smash the shit out of them.
Dude,
As
I
their
would
thoughts.
I would totally build Ultralisks just to like, put creep on a ramp and then have the Ultralisk like slip and slide off onto the Terran army and just fucking murder it.
I think we're completely neglecting the other end of this. On higher gravity planets, you'd end up with all your air units just randomly crashing into things. You'd have a couple of carriers sitting there, and then all
like
of a
I
sudden
said,
they
air
go,
units alone-
"Follow Tassadar," and crash into something.
Yeah, that was the final mission of the StarCraft 1 campaign, remember?
Yep. Go the way of Tassadar and just crash into the nearest Zerg.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, in the final mission of the original StarCraft...
If you don't know what we're talking about, go fucking read the StarCraft lore. We aren't explaining it.
What do you mean, read play?
That's a good point, but Tassadar crashes a carrier into the Overmind, and boom.
After infusing it with both the High Templar and Dark Templar powers.
Yeah, but we're not here to talk about that. We're talking about...
We've already had.
For Anatomy of StarCraft.
That was a nice transition, you know.
Alright, so is there anything else we need to talk about?
My internet sucks dick. Any recommendations for a new carrier?
Actually, I've heard that
Carrier has a
internets
lot.
tend to take after the people using them.
Oh!
God.
Is there anything else Siege Tank related that we have to talk about?
Yep. Okay, so let me get this back on track. So, in switch between MoS, do you think that Siege Tank switches shells as well?
I would have to. I mean, if it's firing
Yeah.
a 90mm cannon in
Yeah,
tank
put 2
mode,
pounds of
No,
shot
I mean like
one
the
pound cannon.
shell is a type, like,
Yeah.
you know, so there are like
like-
high explosive
well,
Yeah,
shells.
because
or pieces.
in normal tank mode, it doesn't do splash damage.
Yeah, so it's likely using some sort of armor-piercing shell in tank mode, whereas in siege mode it's using something more high explosive. But that's a good point. We actually forgot to mention the bonus to armor. Does anybody have any thoughts on this before I give my idea?
Well, there are such things as armor-piercing rounds.
Mhm.
So, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Splash damage.
Just that it could be engineered to, pierce the thick armor of whatever it's fighting. And, and that sort of extra firepower would be wasted on something like a Zergling, cause like, if you hit a Zergling in the leg, it doesn't matter how armor piercing it is, the leg's gonna die no matter, like, it's
Makes you get
tiny.
blown the fuck off.
Alright, but how do you explain the splash damage with an armor-piercing round? Most armor-piercing rounds are like, discarding Sabo rounds. For example, I know the M1 Abrams has these that they use, and what this is it's essentially just a giant spike that they shoot out, and it's made of depleted uranium, and it just smashes right through the tank armor and then bounces all around inside the tank and kills everybody. It doesn't explode.
Oh, I thought we were talking about unsieged. Sieged, your explanation for how it could hit air, I think is probably what it uses for a splash on the ground. That it fires a shell, and after a certain time, probably about 13 range, it's set to explode. So that's another explanation. It could be that the rounds can't actually shoot far enough.
But then how would we explain the bonus to armored? With a flak theory? Or do you want me to just give my idea now?
Yeah, just give your idea.
That was the best flak ever. Okay.
Okay. So,
It was a good flak.
another,
Guys, it explodes into instead of shrapnel, it explodes into armor-piercing rounds.
my idea was that it is actually based off of a shape charge. For those of you who don't know, a shape charge is where you have a cone-shaped explosive with the flat end of the cone at the front of the weapon, and then when it explodes, it forms a jet kind of thing, a jet of flame, and that actually penetrates armor very well, but it still explodes. RPGs use this, I know. I know a couple of things in World War II that used them. That would explain the exploding, but also the ability to do more damage to hard targets.
Guys, I'm remembering something about reading in the campaign about the weaponry that the siege tank uses.
Mm-hmm.
Superheated tungsten rounds.
Yeah, well, that could go in with the shape charge. That would just mean that seeded into the shape charge, you'd have bits of tungsten that would get superheated.
There's your burning part of the weaponry, the superheated tungsten.
And the plasma.
Well, the plasma was a given.
Well,
it's plasma.
On the other hand, I really like Zappy's theory because this explains upgrading the campaign, which is smart shells for Crucial, which is minus 75% friendly fire if you do splash damage. So.
Oh, okay. So I was gonna say basically what that means then is that the shell rotates itself somehow so that the shape charge is pointing away from your allies when it explodes.
I think there's an explanation for that in the campaign armory. If you click on the upgrade, I don't know it off the top of my head,
Yeah, no, it's exactly what I just said.
Okay, so
I've played the campaign a few hundred times.
yeah, I haven't touched the campaign in a long ass time.
Any more thoughts that we have to get to?
Any more thoughts? I'm pretty sure the siege tank, the siege mode could be a projectile weapon. That would make sense why it actually has to raise up its gun.
And you didn't mention this sooner because...
Well, why would it not be a projectile weapon? Is there a community that doesn't involve it launching a projectile?
Well, I mean, more projectile like traditional siege warfare instead of like a rail gun, where it pretty much goes.
Well,
it goes for miles.
It could be a rail gun just with a ballistic trajectory.
Yeah. And it accelerates the charge itself, so...
And I mean, in most railguns, they don't fire in a ballistic trajectory just because they fire their rounds so fast that they don't have to worry about it. But, I mean, this super advanced plasma-shaped charge smart shell that rotates away from allies could be pretty heavy.
And we need to also remember that in actual gameplay, you do not actually see the projectile. So it's probably moving to a degree.
It's so fast.
Yeah.
Faster than the speed of light, yeah.
So therefore, it's quite possibly a railgun system.
That's actually, I gotta bust you.
Okay, go ahead. I'm kind of
Alright,
tired, because I just woke up. I've been sick.
If it's flying at a ballistic trajectory, it would have to spend a certain amount of time in the air.
That is true.
Yeah. And also,
you wouldn't determine that by the speed it fired the shell, but by the angle that it shot and how far it went.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can essentially take, if you're doing the physics equation on it, you can take the horizontal component of the motion out of the equation and just calculate it as if it was moving straight up and down, and it wouldn't change at all. So the speed at which you're firing it actually wouldn't impact all that much.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So
there is a slight delay between when the siege tank turns its gun to the next unsuspecting victim and then when it fires and hits the target. Like, there's a really small delay.
Yeah, but that's more like
you'd actually have to see a
targeting
siege tank
computers.
fire about 100, 200 times in a row before actually noticing it.
So
It's more likely due to the targeting computer trying to acquire whatever target.
I think it's because they use their gravitic drives from World War II to imitate the ant colonies, just like in my childhood.
You're forgetting mine. Where you
Which
just
was shown on the stream.
It was shown on my stream. You should tune in.
It was reenacted by a bunch of ants on the stream.
Yeah. Alazavarus is drinking so much vodka right now.
Everybody watching the show is now passed out.
That was 20 minutes ago when we started.
Okay, we are way over time.
Well,
and I'm
enjoy
going
a
to
long
cut half of this
episode, people. Don't fall asleep and don't overdrink.
Alright, anyway, just say something to close it.
Drink responsibly. Good night.
Something to close it.